Hello and welcome to Conversations with Creatives. My name is Esther Stamford, and this week I am chatting with the freaking fantastic Michelle Bonnard. Now, Michelle is an actress. You might know her from House of the Dragon, Unforgotten. She is a writer. She's written for the BBC. She's currently developing something for Channel 4. She's a filmmaker. She used to be head of screen at LAMDA, and she's just started a company with her husband as well. So there's a lot of ground to cover. And we had a really fascinating conversation. We talk about nudity, being nude on screen in your 40s as a woman. We talk about, Michelle had a very serious health issue. And we talk about how that's impacted her life as a creative, from being on set all day, and what needs to be put in place to deal with that, which is so important to cover, I think. We talk about how she makes her life work as a creative and being married to a fellow creative. We talk about where she gets her ideas from. We talk about all manner of things. So without further ado, I'm going to shut up and please enjoy. And we join Michelle in the dressing room of her theatre, where not her theatre, but of the theatre where she is performing in Sheffield. So she's literally in a creative space. Enjoy.
You are currently doing a show at the moment, aren't you? Up in Sheffield.
Yes, I'm in Sheffield at the Crucible in the studio space, and I'm doing a play called Living with Leo Butler. Not with Leo, but written by Leo Butler, directed by Abigail Graham, with Liz White starring. And I'm going to say she is starring. She's absolutely phenomenal. It's about a family, and it goes through the 55 years of the family. So it starts in 1969 and ends in 2025. And it's about kind of her journey as a young woman into kind of old ladyhood, if that's a word. I'm going to make it a word. And she kind of has dementia, and it's extraordinary, and Liz is extraordinary, and it's kind of about her nuclear family. So it's her and her husband and kids, and about their journey. And then there's another 4 actors. I'm one of the other 4, and we play all of the people in her life, kind of. So I'm playing 6 characters, I think, like 4 characters that you kind of follow the story of. And yeah, it's great. It finishes on Saturday. It's Thursday today, so we've got 3 more shows left. We've got today, and then it's Bank Holiday Friday tomorrow, so then we've got 2 shows on Saturday, and then we're done.
And then you're done. And how long have you been there?
I've been in Sheffield for 5 weeks. 5 weeks, yeah.
And
so we did a week of tech.
And something I always think about is just the level of stamina that it's required to do so many shows. How do you deal with that?
This was a really tricky one, actually, because we're diving straight in. I was really ill.
We are diving straight in.
We'll dive straight in. I got really ill about 18 months ago. So the last play I did was 7 years ago. And then I had a baby, and then COVID happened. And me and my partner were both freelance, so financially we were in a bit of a tricky situation. So then I took a job at LAMDA as kind of head of screen audio and digital, and I job shared that job for a while. Anyway, I did that job for 5 years. Then I got really ill, and I got diagnosed with something called cardiac sarcoidosis, which is an autoimmune disease, but it had been kind of eating away at my heart. So it turns out I was really tired, which I'd put down to menopause, but it turns out that was in heart failure. And so I had heart surgery and I had a pacemaker fitted. Decided to leave my job. Only took like 3 or 4 months out, and then went back to LAMDA, but I was like, actually, I can't really do this. I've got to decide what job I want to do. I've kind of got to make a decision about whether I want to stay in education or stay in the creative side. And for me, it wasn't a massive choice. I was like, well, I'm a creative, and that's what I want to do. And whilst I could do the 2, it was wonderful. Anyway, I left that, but part of like my recovery was kind of going, okay, how do I keep fit? Because if I want to be an actor, there is a level of stamina required. it might be that there's certain jobs I can't do anymore. And I was really aware. And actually, I remember going to see a play with Nadine Matthews in it, and kind of going to see it with my friend and like bursting into tears and being like, I don't think I can ever do that again. I don't know whether my body is capable of doing what I've just seen. And if I'm not capable of doing that, I don't know if I want to be an actor. But that's quite reductive, isn't it? Because you kind of just go, you have to be able-bodied, you have to be fit, you have to do that. And there is a certain level of stamina needed. But I was like, okay, how can I do it my way? So I kind of started going to yoga a couple of times a week. Like the first yoga class I did after surgery, which was about a year ago, I honestly got on my hands and knees for about 40 seconds and did cat-cow. And that's all I could do. And then I was like, can I lie in the class for the rest of the hour? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. And I just very, very slowly built up the stamina. And like I had some days on set for different jobs and everyone was amazing. There's a kind of, you can have an accessibility rider now. So I kind of said that I need to sit down in between takes, and I was bought a chair, which sounds very diva-ish, but I was like, actually, the only way I can get through a 14-hour chair, please. The only way I can get through this day is to sit down. And actually, even now, like, you know, I do have the stamina to get through the show, but I get very tired. And I, like, sometimes in warm-ups, I'm like, I don't know, anybody who's got like a hidden disability will know what it's like when your legs ache so much you can't stand up. And I'll be like, I can get through the show, but I can't get through the show if I now have to stand up for a warm-up and run around and do a HIIT class. So I'll do my breathing exercises, but sitting down. And it's just, so for me, the stamina is about kind of knowing how much my body can take in a certain period of time. And if I've got a 2-show day, you know, backstage, I don't have very much time to sit down at all. Where I have 3 or 4 minutes, sometimes I'll have to sit on the floor and I'll be like, okay, just gather that energy up. But you know, it's exciting in a way, because you just go, well, this is a new way of being. And sometimes you're just like, okay, well, maybe that's just me getting a bit older as well.
Like, yeah. And,
you know.
and I think, well, so I've got Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, which is also an autoimmune disease. I've never had anything as extreme as you have, and do you know what? I felt quite emotional when you were talking about that then. Just because, what an experience, and I've known you since you were very young, and I'm just glad you're okay. But it's understanding what your boundaries were. So about 6 years ago, I had a play on, and there was one night that we did in Nottingham, and I hadn't really slept for a week, and because we were just sort of excited and, you know, and expending so much energy. And then the day of the second show in Nottingham, we'd eaten quite late. We'd only had lunch at like 3:00, but we didn't eat again. And I wasn't nervous before I went on stage. I thought, this is really weird. I'm always nervous. Got halfway through a monologue and it felt like my whole body just powered down. Yeah. And it was like it wasn't even that I hadn't forgotten the lines. I just couldn't process anything. And I had to cut the monologue short. I was getting by on the bare minimum. It's like all the energy went out of my body. And I think now I know what my boundaries are a lot more, and I'm like, I'm not someone who can be going out all the time. I'm quite high energy, and then I need to rest. But I think it's almost, someone said to me once, you're a bit like a Ferrari. You're not a diesel, you don't chug along. You're going at high speed, and then you need to rest.
And I think need to stop.
Then I need to just like not speak to anyone and lie on the sofa. I think a lot of creatives can be like that. But when you've got an invisible illness like you've got as well, and the industry, being on stage, being on set, requires you to be able to do 14, 15-hour days.
I think that's it. And I think that, you know, part of me is also going, okay, I do need to be fit, but I need to be fit in the way that I need to be fit. Do you know what I mean? So actually, I couldn't have done this play if I hadn't been going to my 2 yoga classes a week. But actually, sounds ridiculous, but part of me even being able to do the 2 yoga classes a week was like making space and getting rid of some other things that I was doing. Because I was like, actually, if you need to be fit enough to do this, you need to make space to be able to be fit, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I think you got a bit emotional. I got a bit emotional the other night because I was like, oh my God, I did it. Like I had the heart surgery. I did it. I got through it. I've done a play and I'm really proud of what I've done. Part of that was like literally, rather than having a flat half an hour out of town, I paid a bit of extra money and got a flat close to the theatre so that I could walk in, and it was only going to take me 10 minutes. Part of it was going, this is really silly, but in the rehearsal room, can I have like they got me a little fold out kind of mat, almost like a gym mat, because I was like, sometimes I just want to lie down for like 5 minutes. And it's like making other people in the room understand that that's not a laziness, or that's not but it's just managing energy. And I'm actually really pleased that that's happened to me as a grown-up, because I feel like as a grown-up I can advocate for myself and not feel like a diva and not feel difficult and not feel like I'm being needy, but be like, do you know what, this is what I need in order to be able to do the work. And I think I'm really lucky to be to be an adult in the space and to do that. And also, like stepping onto jobs. I did a show for Apple called Criminal Record. That's the first job I did back. And in fact, I auditioned for it. My agent called me and said, I've got a self-tape for you, Michelle. And I was like, I love him so much. I was like, Eamon, I came out of surgery 5 weeks ago. I was like, is it all right if I don't? And he just kind of went, no, this one's your job, Michelle. He was like, it's a producer you've worked with before. Right, if you worked with before, it's to play like a 40-year-old MP from Birmingham who's like fighting for this family. He was like, I just think it's an Apple show. I think you can do it. So kind of 5 weeks post-surgery, I was like in my front room doing a self-tape. I was like, oh God. But I did it, got the job. And then we filmed kind of, I think it was like 10 or 12 weeks post-surgery. There was a whole conversation about whether I'd passed the medical or not, whether I was insurable. We got through that bit, and but then on set, it again, because it was people I knew, I was able to just really say what I wanted, and I knew that they didn't think I was being lazy. Yeah. But that's awful, isn't it? That I had to think, oh, they might think I'm being lazy. Like, who's asking for a chair because they're lazy?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think you're right. There's something about as you get older. I mean, I'm a couple of years older than you. Now I'm far more I'm going to articulate what I want more, and I'm not so scared to do it. And also I do. You're a mother of daughters, and I've got a daughter and a son, and I want to show them both that don't put up with this. You've got to advocate for yourself, and you've got to. And it is scary when you're new to the industry and you don't want to be perceived in a certain light, but you have to manage. You have an illness, you've been ill, you have to manage yourself, and so that you can do the work. And when you can do the work, you're bloody brilliant at it. And
you do the work, and that's it. At the end of the day, you kind of do the work and you put yourself in a position to do the work. And I love this play, and it's a 3-hour play. I have 27 costume changes in it. I swear to God, the acting is not a problem. The costume
technical side.
That's what the technical side of it is, where the stress is. And, you do have to be fit to do that, but equally, it's a joy. This play is, it's an extraordinary bit of writing. I think Leo is one of the best writers in the country. He ran the writing programme at the Royal Court for years. And in fact, I was an usher when his first ever play was on at the Royal Court, called Redundant. And he was like the youngest writer ever to have a play on at the main house at the Royal Court. And he was an usher before his play went on. And I remember watching this play Redundant probably like 20, 30 times, and then studying it and being like, I want to be in one of his plays one day, because he just kind of seemed to write about the world that I grew up in, not particularly. Kenny's just come in. Kenny, I'm doing a podcast.
Fancy.
I just want to steal some light.
Steal the light.
Steal the light,
This is
Kenny.
Kenny.
Hi, Kenny.
This is Kenny.
Hi, Kenny. I'm
Kenny
Esther. Nice to
Downey.
meet you.
And this is Esther.
Hi Esther, this
Kenny's
is the amazing
in the
Michelle.
play.
We're all
Yes.
very lucky and privileged to be working with this one. Real talent.
Absolutely.
Kenny's lovely. Yeah, he's wonderful. He plays Brian in the play.
Still got lights, look.
He's got some lights. He's got to go and do a self-tape, it seems. See, we're all just hunkering down in the theatre. Self-tape podcast.
The life of a creative. He's off to do
Life of a creative. You think that we're just coming in the evening doing a play and just resting all day, but most of us are just like hustling for the next job. But no, Kenny's wonderful. He was in Vera actually for like 10 years, played opposite Brenda Blethyn.
I love Brenda.
This is his first playback.
Wow. Back to the theatre. I mean, something you were... Well, first of all, Leo's work sounds exactly my cup of tea. And I did have a look, but I couldn't get up to Sheffield to come and watch it. But I'm so pleased it's gone so well. But I love that kind of, real life... following somebody through their life. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to ask you as well about that decision that you had to make a few years ago about, I can't do education and be a creative, and having to make that decision. Because it's a hard one, isn't it? Because I've actually was offered a job last week. I was offered it twice in 2 weeks consecutively to go in and head up an education place, and they were like, can we just have you for 2 days a week, and part of me thought, well, 2 days a week, that is guaranteed income. Guaranteed income, and then I can then spend the other 3 days a week working on other things. But then coming back to the energy, I was like, no, I want to build March House. I've got a podcast with Suze. I've got a play I want to stage again. There are films I want to make. It won't just be 2 days. It'll be parents' evenings. It'll be things like that.
Yeah.
And it's that's like security creativity, isn't it? And it's sort of weighing that up. How hard a decision was that for you?
It was kind of heartbreaking, actually. It would like no irony.
What time? When did you make this decision, Michelle?
No, I mean, you laugh, but it actually,
Did it coincide?
Yeah,
That's
it did.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think it's really hard balancing things unless you're from a financially stable background, whether it's family or parents or a partner who earns enough money so you don't have to worry about it. I think it's really hard. I think it's one of the hardest things for us as creatives, working out that balance of money, and especially if you've got a family. And for me, Michelle Obama said this thing in a book that I read a long time ago, which kind of said you can have all the things, but you can't have them all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I found that really useful because it was like, okay, I've always wanted to write and direct and act. And I've always wanted to, like, writing and acting to be the thing that pays for everything. But it just turned out that just wasn't the case because, theatre wages, you get paid £600, £700 a week. That's not enough money to have a house, a flat in London and 2 kids. It just doesn't pay enough money. So you have to subsidise that somewhere else. You might get enough TV work 1 year, but then the next year you won't get enough. You might do a film and everybody goes, oh, great, you've done that little film and it's great. And you're just like, yeah, I got equity minimum for that film because it was made on a really low budget. And that's fine. I celebrate those people making those films where we get paid equity minimum because I know how hard it is to get a project off the ground. I'm also proud to be in those films or in those, low budget shows because I know how hard it is to make something. But equally, you just go, yeah, but that film for £600, that thing for £600, do you know how much it is to, after school club costs me more than that every couple of months, So using the Michelle Obama thing, I was like, well, at the moment, if what I want, this was about kind of 5 or 6 years ago, and it was lockdown, I was like, if I want to stay in London, if I want to build a little extension on my 2-bed ground floor flat to make it a 3-bed ground floor flat so the kids each have a room, if I want to do that, I have to make a decision to do something which means I earn enough money. And I have the skill. I've been teaching for 15 years. I love it. I've developed the department and that's great. And then it got to the point, like you say, a part-time job isn't really a part-time job if you're creative because you can see how it can grow and you can see how it can get better. So that 3 days became 4 days, became stressful, became exhausting. I would fit filming in around it. I job shared with a friend, she would fit filming in around it. We cared for the students. There's parents' evening, there's reports, there's due diligence, there's like, you know, checking on people when they start working for you, there's building and growing a department, there's managing a budget, you know. And actually, I kind of quietly made the decision that I needed to step away from that. And I knew I was going to find it really hard, and I was like, I think I need to talk it through with someone. So I decided that I'd meet a life coach, and I kind of spoke to 2 or 3 life coaches, decided that I would go with the very sensible one who was like going to write lists with me. Then had one test session with this other woman who was very, let's ground and breathe and in touch with our emotions. I was like, this isn't going to suit me because this is far too airy-fairy for me. Immediately burst into tears. I was like, I need to leave. She was exactly the right person for me because it was all about kind of what's keeping you somewhere and what do you need to let go of in order to move forward. And actually, once I'd made that decision, a week later I had my heart attack.
Isn't that interesting? On the podcast that I do with Suze, we've just had a lady on with Claire later. She talks a lot about autoimmune diseases and how they are often to do with stored traumas and emotions.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that. I used to lose my voice when I was 18, kept losing my voice. And when I was sent to a speech therapist because they thought I'd got nodules on my vocal cord, the speech therapist said, I spent 5 minutes with her and she said, you're just not articulating yourself, you're not expressing it. And then 10 years later, it turns into hypothyroidism, which is, you know, your thyroid's in your throat and it's where everything gets stuck. And it's so interesting what's kept within the body, isn't it? It's fascinating. And we know as well, I mean, I had jobs where I took a job as a recruitment consultant and broke out in so much eczema, you know, because my body literally rejected it.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Like the more I read about women and autoimmune diseases, especially, and kind of stress. So it's a hard decision. It was a hard decision financially. I was really lucky that I'd done a couple of seasons, quite a small part in House of the Dragons, and they wrote me back into the 3rd season and wrote me into another 3 or 4 episodes, and that was much better paid, and that allowed me just the cushion to take 3 months off work and just heal, and do bits of filming alongside it. And then from there, part of my work as a creative was also just to be like, okay, maybe don't stress so much about money. Like, you can find a way to make it. Like, you've been doing this for a really long time. And actually, I don't need to be responsible for things I'm not responsible for. And, you know, how as a creative, can you care about what you're doing but not hold everybody else's trauma and need? And that's just part of growing as a person, probably, as well as a creative.
It is, and it's also the stepping away from education, because I'm very much the same as you, and when I am in an environment like that, which I have been many times, it is never a part-time thing. Even I ran a weekly group last year for professional actors. I ended up doing way more than I ever set out to do. I was investing in their lives. They were messaging me. I loved them all so much, and we did a showcase, and I had them to my house for an extra 30 hours to rehearse the showcase because I was so invested in it. And then our mutual friend Susie, who I do my podcast with, she said to me, what are you doing? You gave up a workshop 5 years ago so you could focus on your career, but you are putting yourself back in a position where you are elevating others and not elevating yourself, and you're taking care of those people so you can't do your own work. And it's fascinating, isn't it, as you get older, understanding that those patterns that you have. And I think the over responsibility thing is really interesting. And I don't know if that is a predominantly female thing or a predominantly experienced thing. I don't know, but it's interesting.
I think that I think if you're good at teaching, you love teaching. I think you can only be a really good teacher if you love it. And I think when you love something, once you start it, you're in it and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this to the best of my ability. And if you know you can do a better job of something and you're diligent, you kind of push further. And I think that's the thing that I've started to learn about myself. But actually, to give yourself space is really powerful, and to say, I do want to do that, but maybe I want to do that later or a different time. And I've just been commissioned to write a pilot of a TV show that I've been developing, and I was developing it over lockdown. And there's 2 producers on it. One used to be a theatre producer and is a TV producer now, and one is come from a TV background. And I had a conversation a couple of weeks with them a couple of weeks ago about when I'd start writing the pilot, and we kind of said, I said, oh, well, I can have a couple of meetings in the final week of the show, you know, or once the show's gone up. And the one who used to work in theatre just went, don't do that, Michelle. Let's just start once the play comes down.
Yeah.
And I was like, thanks, Pia. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because it's that thing of just going, actually, let me do this thing now.
Yeah.
And then let me do the next thing then.
Yes.
And let me just take things one at a time. But I have to really actively tell myself to do that. And I have to have people around me to remind me, like Susie did for you,
Yeah.
you know, to say, actually, why don't you just do that one thing and do it really well? And then later you can do another thing. It doesn't, you know, we don't always have that privilege. You know, of course, things cross over and they're really difficult. But I think more and more, I kind of go, what do I need to do? What do I need to do next? And how is that going to drive me? And I don't regret for a second the teaching I did and the work that I did at LAMDA. I think I'm a better actor because of it. I think I'm a better writer. I think I understand things. I think my ability to work with people's improved. My kind of understanding of what it takes to manage a team of people. You know, from a time where maybe I didn't do it brilliantly and then I did it really well, and, you know, how senior management works in an organisation. There's so much stuff that I learned through that job that is useful to me as a creative, but it also lets me go, okay, that's where I need to let that go. Or that's where
So
I need
it's
to
just the end of a
jump in
chapter. It was a great chapter, but actually there are only so many hours in the day. I have children, I have a life, I need to think about my fitness, I need to have space because for me, and I want to know how you operate with this, but I don't know what I think until I've got some space. So at Christmas, I will turn my phone off for a couple of weeks and I won't look at social media, and very quickly I'm flooded with things that I just don't have the time to think about. So now I'm aware that I need to carve out some space just for my brain to process. And they used to say, you know, in a shower, that's when you get your ideas. How does creativity work for you? Do you need space or do you need structure? How do you carve it out?
No, I think I need space, actually, because I think I was speaking to my friend Amy this morning and I kind of said, oh, I'm a bit nervous about writing this pilot. And it's because at the moment I don't have time, I don't have space to think about it. But I know that when I give myself a couple of days, I will be overwhelmed with ideas. I'll get really excited. I'll dive in. I'll go on a deep dive. I'll go on my research trips. And I know it will be the most important thing in my life for that period of time that I'm doing it. But I need space. And I think it's really easy. Yeah. So you know, where do I get my ideas from though? I think I started writing and making stuff because
Oh, Liz actually came on my podcast.
Liz came on your podcast
With Susie. Hi.
I'm doing a podcast.
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry. I was like, no one will be in the dressing room at this time. We don't have to be here till 5.
Don't you worry.
Sorry, Liz White.
Esther.
Liz White.
Oh.
Liz White. Yeah, Liz came on my podcast with Suze, and I decided on the colour of my lounge from what colour of hers was.
Oh, well, I'll tell her in a bit. Yeah, I'll tell her in a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry, Esther.
Oh, that's okay.
I thought nobody would be here.
No, it's all right. It's a proper dressing room. It's a crucible. It's a proper dressing room. But yeah, I'm kind of obsessive.
We can start that again if you want.
That's okay.
So,
that's okay.
Esther, tell me.
Yeah, I am quite obsessive, and I think a lot of creatives are like this. Like, if I am doing something, I think about it 24/7. You know, when you watch a detective drama and they've got the wall with everything on, and I'll say to my husband, I think I'd be a good detective, and he said, you would, but you'd be a freaking nightmare because you would just be in it 24/7. And like you say, when you've got some space and you can think about that next project, it's almost like you're awash with ideas, like it's ideas central. Is that how your brain works as well?
Yeah, it does. It becomes really obsessed with things, and I deep dive into things. And yeah, I mean, there's like the things on the wall, and like world building post-its on the wall and all over the place, and piles of research and photocopies of everything. So I kind of, yeah, I really deep dive into things. But I have started thinking about how to approach things slightly differently in a way to make things manageable. So I think one of the things that I do is I get really excited about an idea at the beginning, and then I develop it, and I write the first draft of it, and then I write the second draft of it, and at that point I just get a bit of fatigue.
Yeah.
And I turn off a little bit. So part of what I've been doing over the last kind of year or two is kind of working out how I get through that next bit. And sometimes it's through working with a really good producer who can give you notes and be that person that's feedback. Because actually, if you work with a good producer, they're invested in it and they want to develop it, or a director. But I need to be accountable, and I need to have a time frame to be accountable to. And also starting to work with other people. I work with a brilliant writer, sometimes called Rachel Flowerday, and she developed the Mallory Towers series for CBBC, and I wrote an episode of Mallory Towers with her. But I was part of that writers' room for Mallory Towers Series 4. And actually just being in a room with another kind of 12 people, all of us talking through the ideas and how we're going to storyline things, I started to really understand how structurally things work. And I've been in 3 or 4 writers' rooms since. And so part of the bit that I find a little bit boring is that kind of mapping out the really, really long stuff, because I'm like, oh, but I want to write the episode. But actually the episode will be better if you can put in some detail from episode 6 into episode 1, so that we're going forward. But actually to map out to episode 8, oh my God, like, you're only being paid for episode 1, but to make episode 1 great, you have to map out to episode 8. So I think my process has developed over the last couple of years, and where I'm really working hard is on that bit that I find the tricky bit. And I think everybody, I think lots of people who write about writing, if you read a book on writing by Simon Stevens or John York or whoever, they'll say that there are some writers who think really structurally, and there are some writers who think in terms of place or character. Nobody's good at all of it.
No.
So like, my job is to not talk myself down in the bit that I find hard, because I'm just like, well, actually, that's the bit I find hard, but I find the other bit absolutely joyful. So part of my kind of busy brain is to give myself permission to say, in this 2 hours, I am going to think structurally. And I'm gonna really think structurally for 2 hours. I'm not going to be distracted. And then at the end of it, I can give myself like a big tick for like, yeah, you did that. But I kind of need that dopamine tick of, you did the hard bit. Well done, Michelle.
Yeah, because the thing is, like you say, we're not all. I'm with you. I'm character and stuff, and the structure at the beginning's boring. But like you say, if you can work with a team of people and being held accountable by a producer, I mean, how did you get into writing for the BBC?
So I kind of had quietly been writing plays and ideas for plays and workshops since I left drama school. So I'm talking like 20 years. And then about 12 years ago, I decided to write. I asked my mum what her kind of favourite memory was. Or no, her first memory. And she said, oh, my first memory is of watching my dad rip up sheets to use as bandages for the forest fighters. And my mum grew up in Kenya in the 1950s. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, oh, well, we were a Seychelles war family. The British were locking up loads of Kikuyu, which is one of the tribes, because they were... Kikuyu were fighting for independence. And I was like, what? This is history I know nothing about. the British imprisoned over like 700,000 Kenyans in concentration camps, and this is after World War II. And she was like, and it was a death penalty offence to help the Kikuyu, but also there were kind of threats against life if you didn't help the forest fighters. And Mum was like, so I remember watching my dad rip up this sheet as a bandage and being really scared. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, that's like, I didn't know anything about this. So I did a deep dive into research, and there was a case at the High Court where the Kenyans were taking the British to court for reparations, because it turns out that Churchill and various other high kind of people high up in the government knew what was happening in Kenya. And, you know, prisoners were being castrated, hung, mass trials, mass detention. So I did loads of research, and I wrote this series, and it went into development. And I wrote it whilst I was filming something called The Fear for Channel 4, and there was a brilliant Scottish actor called Peter Mullen in it. And Peter Mullen asked me why I was staying down when we were filming for a couple of days. I said, I'm writing this thing, and I've got a couple of days and I'm off, and I'm just going to write it. And he was like, when you finished it, send it to me. And I kind of went, okay, are you sure? And we finished filming, and I finished the script, and on my last day's filming, I printed out the script. It was 12 years ago, before like we emailed scripts to everybody, and I just popped it in his dressing room with a note, and I said, here's the pilot. If you want to read it, do. Thanks very much, Michelle. And he phoned me about 4 weeks later, and I saw his number, and I was like, oh God, I can't pick it up. And my husband said, you need to pick it up. If Peter's calling you, he's read your script. And he was lovely. He just said, what are you going to do with it? It's brilliant. And I said, I don't know, really. Put it in a drawer. And he said, no, you're not. It is done. I don't need to show it to anybody else. And he said, no, you're not. He said, you're going to send it. He said, Michelle, it's really, really good. He said, you're going to send it to 10 producers. You're going to send it to 10 agents. And you're going to put a note saying, Peter Mullen thinks this is one of the best scripts he's read in a while. Give them my mobile number and tell them to call me. And I was like,
I mean, because Peter Mullen is fucking fantastic. Yeah.
It's fucking amazing. And I kind of went, okay. So I did. And I sent it to 10 agents. And he said, tell them to put it at the top of their reading pile. So I did. And I sent it to 10 agents, sent it to 10 producers. And it got optioned by a production company. I got signed by Independent as a writer. And got a really lovely agent who's Phoebe Waller-Bridge's agent. And it went into development. We wrote another episode. It didn't get made, which has always made me sad. And it went into development again a couple of years ago, and it's still not been made. But that got me my agent. And then, you know, when I signed with my writing agent, I had meetings with lots of different people. And, you know, it was great at first. I then had a baby. I got commissioned to write an episode of Vera, but I had a 10-day-old baby, and quite frankly had a bit of a nervous breakdown, so I didn't do that, which was really sad. Was really, really probably the hardest thing. But I also had to just be like, I've got a 10-day-old baby. I can't write a 2-hour crime drama for ITV. But and since then it's been really interesting, because I think it's an interesting time, isn't it? As a woman, as a mother, you kind of just go, well, what do you have time to do? And I wrote an episode of Mallory Towers. I've had a couple of series in development. I've written 2 or 3 features, which have, you know, I've been doing alongside stuff. But that's how I kind of got in to write Mallory Towers. It's because like he represented another writer, and then we got put together on a different project, and we enjoyed working together. And she brought me in for that episode into that writer's room. So it's, you know, it's a series of events. But I was watching a video with Kate Winslet the other day, and you know, she's directed her first feature in her kind of 50s, and she's like, yeah, it's kind of because you spend the last 20 years bringing up a family and working and making things work, and And I think I used to be really impatient. You know, I was like, I signed with my writing agent 12 years ago. What have I been doing? I've only written like 2 or 3 things, but actually I've written loads of things. It's just they haven't been made. And I've kind of been doing other stuff. And I feel like this is beginning to be the time where I'm like, okay, my eldest is at secondary school. My youngest, you know, she's at primary school, but she's a bit more self-sufficient now. And, you know, there's more time.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah. And for you, with writing, I know you wrote a film, what was it called? Standstill, with Zoe Tapper.
Yeah.
That was about postnatal depression, that you both experienced. And it had Papa Residue in, and it was shown at the BFI and the London Film Festival. Is writing for you about getting that stuff out from inside you? And what is the driver for you to write?
I think to start with, it was because I didn't see families like mine on stage or screen. So when I very first started writing, I'm like from a mixed household in Birmingham. My mum is kind of Creole Seychellois. Like we've got a real mix of where our family are from, and I never saw it. I was just like, I don't see the people that feel like my life on screen or on stage, and I found it really frustrating. And then also I'd audition for stuff and I'd be like, I don't feel like these are written for people like me. I don't know. I you know, which is why I love Leo's writing. So to start with, it was because I wanted more representation of people that existed in the world that were like people like me. And then often it would, and then it would be about things that I didn't feel that were fair. Like I think I've kind of tapped into that. Loads of my work is about like justice and emotion and like the world not being fair and things not, you know, not being equitable. So I kind of write like lots of things that I write are about society or the way that society sees certain people and the way people experience things. With Standstill, I think me and Zoe both had a really incredibly difficult time. We'd never had depressive personalities. We'd never found things particularly difficult. We'd had relatively blessed lives, you know, with difficulty within that, you know. It just hit, both of us talked about it and it just hit us. We were just like, get us away from the world. Like get me, I think both of us said that during that process, we were like, put me in hospital, lock me in a room. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk to I don't want to see my baby. I think actually me and Zoe had a very different experience. Like at first I was like, I can't be near my daughter. Found it really hard. And she was like, I can't let go of my daughter. So it was like an almost opposite reaction. But both of us really struggled. And then we looked into it and we were like, there's nothing made about this. We've not seen this. And also, nobody talked about it. And actually, we made the film, we developed it as part of this thing. The BFI did this thing called London's Calling, and it was like a film fund for London filmmakers, a bit like in all the regions where there's funds for regional filmmakers. And we went through a kind of development process, and I think there were 20 scripts at the beginning, and then 10 got chosen to continue, and then I think 5 got funded. Naz was one of the 5 that got funded. But yeah, I think you're right. It was about kind of telling stories. For me, it's about writing things that I don't think I see. And I find it unfair that I don't know about things. I'm like, how did I not know about that? How do we have all of the books that we've got and all of the media that we've got and all the films that have ever been made? And how have I got to the age where I'm 33, I've had a child, and nobody has mentioned that I might get postnatal depression? I was like, and now I think part of the film was then shown to some parliamentarians, and it was also done, like we had a postcard campaign, and actually shortly after the film, and it was not just because of us, it was because of a swell of things that were happening at the same time. The postnatal care of the mother is now part of the post-birth check. So
My
after you
God,
had your
because of your
baby, it's like,
film.
no, because of lots of things that were happening at the same time.
Yes,
But as
but
part of that conversation,
that is incredible. Oh, Michelle, that is so amazing. Oh God, I'm going to
yeah.
start crying again. It's fucking
Oh
ridiculous. But you
no,
know, that's the power of art though, isn't it? That's the power of you tell a story and people can see themselves in that story. Like I saw the other day, and I did share the clip, and I think it's so brilliant. Julie Hesmontal,
yeah,
who was
I
in
love
Coronation Street and played a
it.
trans woman. And she said it was so brilliant because it did so much societally that people would come up to her knowing that she had been born a man, and would say to, you know, as the character Hayley was, and would say to her, when are you and Roy going to get married? These would be old people that wouldn't necessarily normally have agreed with that. And she was like, well, we can't legally. And they were like, no, it doesn't matter. And I just love the power of art. You know, you went through something really traumatic, but you took that and you shared it, and that will have helped so many other women go, I'm not wrong for this is just something that can happen. And also part of that got Parliament to change things. It's amazing.
I mean, I think for me, that's it. It's like I talked about justice, and you know, justice can be like massive or it can be small. You know, if I think about the Kenyan script that I'd written about the Mau Mau, that's massive justice. That's like, do you know what? The British government lost their case. The Kenyans won their case. I mean, what's horrendous is like, I think it worked out at like £2,000 per claimant, you know, and the British agreed to put a statue up in the middle of Nairobi. I'm like, great, good. That's not reparations as far as I'm concerned.
No.
So that's massive justice. But justice can be as small as, why don't I know about this thing, actually? And so for me, writing, I think a lot of it is to do with, why don't we hear that person's story? Why don't we see that person's story? Wouldn't society be better if we had a more complex view of what's right and wrong?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be fascinating to dive in from an angle that we've not dived in from before? So yeah, for me, that's always been the spine of what I write. And actually, you know, part of the story of the series of Mallory Towers was that they're, you know, and this is a writer's room of a kids show that's based on an Enid Blyton book, but it was to do with the fact that the man that owned the house and owned the building that Mallory Towers was in was actually a crook, and he was a thief, and you know, and he was probably to do with the slave trade. And you know, it was like in small writing, we weren't, you know, I think to start with, we were like, and they're going to put a statue down, you know, a bit like the Edward Colston statue, and it didn't go there. I would have taken it there if I my show, but it didn't go there. But those themes kind of run through the bottom of things because it's really important that what we make matters. And it, you know, people have walked out of this show repeated, like people are sobbing through the second half, like floods of tears, and they're just like, oh God, I came out and I wanted to ring my mom, and it came out and it made me realise that woman that I see in the street is in danger or is finding things troubling. And I think, that's why I want to write. And it's really nice talking to you about it because, you know, I'm about to step back into the writing space, and I'm like, okay, Trash, which is the series that I'm writing, it's about the waste management industry, and it's about a family who run a recycling metal plant in the Midlands, and it's about the kind of family dynamics and the politics of who they are and why they want to do what they do, and the differing views. But actually, you know, what runs underneath it is kind of like, are they being treated well because of who they are? Who's looking down on them? Who's allowing them to do it? Who's lifting them up? Who's rubbishing? You know, it's called Trash, and like, do people think that they're trash? You know, what do we respect in society? What will we take and recycle? You know, so we've got the environmental thing, but also, why do we look at certain people a certain way? I've always been really fascinated in that.
Yes.
So I think that's a lot of what I write about.
And it's shining a light on things, isn't it? I'm fascinated by the grey. I love things. I no one's black and white. No one's good. You know what I mean? There's shades of grey and everything, and just those things that are that filter through to us from a really young age that we've got unconscious bias about, and we don't know why we think the way we think, and that's the power of art, that's the power of storytelling or paintings or songs. But it's, to move people so that they're leaving your play crying and they have a different view, and you've touched them and you've made them think about something.
You've made them think, and also you've had a shared experience. Like we used to have, I think it's more and more difficult to have a shared experience now, because there are so many different platforms that people watch things on. So actually, where do you have those water cooler moments? And I think that's why people love things like Traitors, because it's very rare that everybody, the whole of society, is all watching the same thing, that they can have a conversation about. And that's what's lovely about the theatre. Like, everybody in that room has been in the theatre at the same time. And then if people pop to the pub for a drink afterwards, like, it's really rare that you sit down with that many people and have a collective experience and then get to talk about it. Like, that's lovely. Like, what a relief, actually, to realise that you are sharing an experience with somebody.
Because we're becoming, and we're being told we're more and more divided. But actually, if you get in a room with people and they're all from different backgrounds, I was doing some teaching up at Performing Arts College in Birmingham the other day, and everybody was from different backgrounds. Now, you and I were both part of Central Television Workshop, latterly known as ITV Workshop, growing up. And what I loved about that was, and I don't think I appreciated it at the time, but I definitely do now, is everybody was from completely different backgrounds. It was free.
Yeah.
We auditioned to get in. There were only 60 kids in the Birmingham group, and there were never more than 60. When you got to 18, you had to move on. You were lucky to be there. You walked down. It was purely based on talent, but consequently, you'd got all colours, creeds, races, economic backgrounds. So we were just all a pool. And now when I see any of those people, I remember seeing somebody... a few years ago, I went to the Mac and there was something going on. There was someone who worked behind the bar, and a friend of ours, Ross, was there, and he said, she went to workshop, but she's like 20 years younger, just before it closed. And another friend of ours was there, and he went, so you're my sister. And there was that kind of collective thing, and that sort of having your eyes opened. And it's amazing that the theatre can do that. It's energy, and you go out and you're affected by it, and it's so special. One thing I want to ask you about, which is changing tangent a little bit, but you had to take your clothes off on House of the Dragons. I want to talk about your tits, Michelle.
No, we can talk about my left tit, but not about my right tit, if that's all right.
Because I remember you posting about this online, and I think even in your 20s, taking your clothes off is freaking scary. Although I look back and think, I should have been naked a lot.
I should have been naked in my 20s.
I should have been running around. What was I thinking? I was amazing. And then now we're obviously in our 40s. So to be asked to take your clothes off, how did you find that?
Well, do you know what's funny is that when I left drama school, I got asked to audition for Game of Thrones. And in the audition for Game of Thrones, they wanted me to be topless. And this is like 20 years ago. And I refused the audition. Turns out that would have been quite a lucrative job. But I was like, I'm not going to an audition and taking my top off. Like it was before Game of Thrones was what it was. So I didn't even know what it was for. So I said no. And then when this part came up, like it was one scene in the first series as a brothel madam who opened the door and said, "Oh, how you've grown," and it kind of said in the script, it's like she has a voice that stirs the loins of men. So I just did an impression of Nigella Lawson. I was at my mother-in-law's 60th birthday party, and I was a bit drunk, and I did my self-tape. I was like, "Oh, how you going?" I did it. It was great fun. It was. I had to open the door, ironically, to an ex-student of mine from LAMDA.
No, with your boob out?
No, this was fully clothed. So I opened the door and I was like, "How you've grown!" And we couldn't get through it because he was an ex-student of mine. We were really laughing. It was with another boy from Workshop, you and Mitchell, as well. And then they were like, "Oh, she's really fun. We want to write her back in." So I said, "Oh, great." But I knew that she ran the brothel, so I was like, "Oh God, she's going to have sex, isn't she?" And then they had an intimacy coordinator. So that's a person who talks to you about what you're prepared to do and what you're not. So she said, and I can't work out whether I'm allowed to do an impression of her because I don't. She's so brilliant. She's from New Zealand, and she was like, "So Michelle, the person in this scene is going to be naked with you." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." She was like, "How do you feel about nudity? Where are you going to go?" And I was like, "So look, I don't mind massively, but I don't want to be completely naked. It's not a big enough part, quite frankly." It's like,
Yeah.
I'll think about, I was like, I'm not being paid enough money. I'm not in enough episodes to just get naked.
You can see
Got a
one
daughter
boob.
I was like, my daughter's about to go to secondary school. I was like, it's too much. And she went, okay. So, and I said, but I don't mind. I was like, a bit of hip is fine. I don't mind my boobs, like whatever. And she went, okay, so sometimes just one boob is great, because then they have to choose how to shoot it. And I was like, oh, okay. I said, my left boob. She went, okay, your left boob. I was like, yeah, sure. She's like, nipple or no nipple? And I was like, oh, I don't know, no nipple. And then like a bit later, I went, actually, yeah, nipple is fine. My nipples are great. And
I've got amazing nipples. Get them in.
She was like, she was like, so left boob, one nipple. I was like, yeah, great. And we carried on talking, and she was like, okay, so just so you know, Ewan is going to be naked, and what that means is that there is going to be a penis. That penis is going to be real, and that penis is going to be close to you. I was like, cool, great. And she was like, but if you don't want his penis to be close to you, we can also look at how that works. And I was like, look, it's fine.
Did you have to sort of determine, well, where in terms of my body is it going to be close to? Is it face? Is it leg? Where is the penis going to be?
I kind of thought about it a little bit, and I was like, look, it's fine. Like, that's all right. And she went, okay. And this is, I might have to ask you to edit this bit out.
Okay. See afterwards. I'll put it behind the paywall.
Do you know what? I genuinely have thought about monetizing my left hip.
Yeah.
She said, how do you feel about to show the difference in age between the two of you, and the fact that it's like a maternal relationship? How do you feel about? And I'm not even going to say the word.
No,
yeah.
no, not bitty. Bitty.
She didn't use that word. And I basically just said, no.
No, thanks.
No. And she went, okay. And the scene actually that we shot, and it starts with a girl pouring a glass of milk.
My God.
Of course it does, because I wouldn't. Anyway, so actually, and then when I watched it, there's no nipple in. There's very little nudity in at all. And it's shot beautifully, and it's lit beautifully, and the DP has done beautiful work, and there's choreography around it, and there's this extraordinary mass of candles that surround us. So I was fine, because we had all of those conversations. I had conversations with the director, Claire Kilner. There are other women in it who are naked, and that's wonderful. And I think for me, the other thing was, I've never seen a 40-something-year-old woman who's a size 14 with generous breasts. I've never seen that body on screen in a show like House of the Dragons. So there was a bit of me which was like, do you know what? You had all of those really beautiful Renaissance women with their curves and their hips and their folds. And I'm like, we don't see that. And for me, actually, that it is important that we see that. So there was a bit of me which was like, do you know what? I'll take it all out. I'll get it all out. Yeah. But also I was like, but also I've got a daughter who's at secondary school, and I want to be really careful about what I put out. But me and my mate Amy were joking around and said we should do a podcast called My Left Hip, or we should, like, we've talked about, whether we, like, do you have an OnlyFans? I'm like, I wonder if I can earn as much money just from actually showing my left hip as I did from filming House of the Dragons.
Kate Nash.
I know.
What's funny? Pictures of her bum.
We did it. So we came up with the idea for the podcast before Kate Nash did the pictures of her bum, and we were like, oh, well, we missed a trick there because
Well, no, I
obviously
don't think
works.
you did, because that was, and also, you know, one left boob is very niche, and you know, you'll have a target audience. A lot of people do feet pictures. You can do left boob.
Since that left tit has been on screen, there's now a pacemaker behind it as well. So there's, you know, it's bionic.
That's
it's
really niche.
Left tit. That's really
My pacemaker left tit.
My pacemaker left tit.
Ah.
So, you know, I think nudity is really interesting. Like, I remember when I was younger, actresses kind of a similar age would often be in shows where they were naked. And I remember not being asked to be naked in scenes where there was nudity written on screen. And I was like, it's because I'm not really skinny with flat chest. And like, I almost found it offensive. I'm glad I didn't. Do you know what I mean? But I'd be like, wow, you're asking my size 8 friends to get naked.
Yeah.
And then you're actively going, oh, no, don't worry about it, Michelle.
Keep your clothes on.
Keep your clothes on.
And actually, going back to being older ladies now, and I mean, I still think we're girls. I still want to refer to us as girls. But, you know, older women that... And in our 40s, we can advocate and we can say, do you know what? If I want to see a change, I'm the one that's leading this now. So I'm in my 40s, and I'm going to get my boob out, and I'm going to do it for all the other women that are sitting at home going, she looks amazing. And to be less, you know, like you said with your writing, if you can't see it, then you sort of feel different. So we're used to seeing very beautiful young women naked on screen, and who are size 8s and very lithe and nubile. I always remember Shirley Valentine, you know, when she jumps in the sea off the boat. Yeah, you know,
and Emma Thompson, and who? Sorry. Emma Thompson in that film recently,
Leah Grand.
With Leah Grand, and her, you know, and being like, do you know what, this is what a body looks like when you're older, and she's, you know, skinny and stunning and wonderful. But, you know, again, you know, Judi Dench, you'd never seen her naked, and she's like a normal sized person. And I think that there's a really interesting thing about what people want to see versus what is seen, and like what the size cut off is. Yeah.
And what the narrative is around everything, really, isn't it? The narrative, we only see girls that look like this with their clothes off. Anything else, it's again, it's all programming, isn't it? It's all programming.
Yeah. The showrunner on House of the Dragons, we were talking about it, and she did say at one point, it's like, oh, have we missed a trick? She's like, because the brothel is called Mothers, and she was like, all of the women in it should have been older.
Yeah. Yes. And how, you know, it's like, what a revelation that would be.
Yeah, there's a spin-off, isn't there?
There's a spin-off.
Which is just, older women getting naked in the brothel.
Yes. I don't know if I'd want to be in it, actually, but, you know, you kind of want to. Power to the women, but also, oh, God.
Also, no.
Also, no, not me. Don't also pick me. I know, where are we? Oh, we're at 1 hour. Right, I was going to ask you one last thing.
Of course.
Shit Moth is your new project that you started. Now, I am hoping that you and your husband called it Shit Moth because there was a moth that wasn't flying towards the light, was flying away from it, and you're like, that's a shit moth. Yes. Like, what? Can you tell me very quickly about that? I didn't realise we were at an hour, so I do apologise.
No, it's all right. So Shit Moth is... So my husband is a photographer called John Holloway, Jon Holloway. He's a brilliant photographer. But I think one of the things we've realised over the last few years is that you can't be a photographer anymore unless you make video as well, because that's the world that we live in. So he's been kind of developing his video practice, but because he's a photographer and kind of trained at art school, he wants his video stuff to be really beautiful and not just like, I've put a camera on something. So we made like a microfilm together last year for a charity that works in East London with kind of underrepresented women, providing mentorship. We were like, oh, should we make it under a production company banner, and maybe we want to make stuff over the next few years, and maybe it'd just be useful to have that. So we kind of decided to set something up, and we thought about lots of different names. We went camping last year with friends and with their kids. we had this camping holiday and we'd run out of fire at the end of the night, and we were all a bit drunk. The kids were asleep, we were a bit drunk. There was a like van coming round with firewood, and I was like, I'll go and get the firewood.
Is that
And
your
I
Nigella
ran.
impression for House of the
No.
Dragon?
I'll go get firewood. I'll get the firewood. And I was like, I'll go. And I ran towards this truck, but I was a bit hammered. And I basically just kept missing the truck. And they were just like, and so we all gave each other nicknames. And they called me Shitmoth because I couldn't make it towards the lights of the truck. They were just like, yes, she's a shitmoth.
You were the shitmoth.
And my husband was nicknamed Thatcher because, like, he's the one person in the group that we think could thatch a roof because he grew up in the New Forest.
Yes.
Somebody was called T-Bone. I can't remember why, but we all had these silly nicknames, and we were going to call it Thatcher and Moth, but we decided it sounded like a paint company.
Yes.
So we called it Shitmoth, and actually
Brilliant.
I have lots of different ideas, and John is all about lighting because he's a photographer and went to art school, so it's kind of like the light to the flame. So that's who we are, Shitmoth. You can follow us on Instagram, but we're just at the beginning. But I think it's that thing that we talked about earlier, which is you can do all the things, you can't do them all at the same time, and for me it's just really important to have that there as a kind of indication of what we want to be doing as well.
Yes.
Because sometimes you just got to put something out into the world and say, yeah, we want to make films. We might not be able to do it for the next 5 years, and in the meantime we'll develop our practice in other ways, and but that's there. Shitmoth.
That's what March House is for me. It will be a production company. I will put things out underneath it, underneath the name as a production company, and there's interviews, and it's almost an umbrella term for. I mean, there's the 4 March sisters as well from March in Little Women.
Yeah,
they're all
oh
like
my
a
God, it's
writer.
my favourite.
Oh, just that. Well, you've got a writer, an actor, an artist, and a musician, and that's where the name came from for me, because I wanted, I don't identify as one type of creative, but I think it's good, to just here's the umbrella, Shitmoth. We're going to make some stuff together, and we've got our first commission to do some work for a charity and to kind of make some work for a charity. And I think that's the other thing. We kind of just want to work doing nice things to start with, and, advertising / making charity work. And then who knows what it will be down the line. But very exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for. I've loved talking to you, and I feel like I want to go and write something immediately.
It's exciting.
You've really inspired me, and it's a joy hearing a little bit about your fantastic career and the work that you're doing, because you're doing so much and you're putting so much good into the world, and it's brilliant, and it's lovely to talk with you.
Isn't she brilliant? So inspiring and so calm and so thoughtful, and I felt super inspired talking to her, and I hope you did too. I hope you felt inspired listening to her. She is a remarkable woman, and it was very special to get to talk to her. Anyway, I shall sign off. I will be back next week with another episode of Conversations with Creatives. If you liked it, please do like, subscribe, share. It's really helpful. And as always, if you didn't, just jog on. It's fine. And have a lovely week. Take care.